So some of us are heading off on a residential retreat soonish, um, and um, and retreats are a part of how Vipassana or slash insight meditation and many other forms of, well, Buddhism and many other forms of things in life where we go deeper. The hope is we go deeper into certain things.
So we want to talk a bit more about retreating, what we're retreating from when we go on retreat, and what we're moving toward, and really discerning a little bit more about retreats. And because a lot of us will be away for the week of June 16th through 22nd. Luckily, we have some teachers who are not going and other volunteers who have stepped up and will be reading from our book and still holding the daily online meeting, which is really exciting that we can do that.
Yes, and so we wanted to sort of see there, meditation retreats have some general kinds of things um, that happen on them, and we wanted to speak to some of that and also speak to some of the ways it might function a bit differently on a reflective meditation retreat.
So you may be on your own retreat here at the Daily Online, retreat from us, from our regular schedule. But we do, again, like Nelly's talking about, we want to talk about how retreats deepen our practice, and in what ways can we actually articulate that. So one kind of statement is extended periods of silence and fewer distractions can allow practitioners to go deeper into their meditation, deeper than in their daily life.
So reflective meditation, though, we do value both. We don't have a perhaps quite as much of a focus or a preference or a hierarchy about what happens on retreats. We think that what happens in daily life is equally and differently valuable. Um, yeah, I think of it as a continuum, really, where, when we completely leave our life behind, and generally, when I went on Vipassana retreats, we weren't, well, when I went, we didn't have smartphones. So that took care of that issue right there. And then it wasn't even something we considered possibly a distraction. But also we didn't read, we didn't write. We don't do it that way.
Right. We actually do bring our daily life with us on retreat, and then have people create their own structure around what they'd like to do, what they like to be able to check their emails while they're on the retreat, listen to news or not. Some people need to be connected, especially at our stage of life, just medically. We need to have emergency contacts, ways to be in the world and not completely out of it.
As though one could be completely out of the world.
Well, sometimes it could feel that way on certain in-person retreats where really everything is blocked. You feel like you've entered a different world. I mean, I think part of that for me is that retreats really do interrupt our daily life practice. That you go into a beautiful place, usually. They're often spots where nature is flourishing, where we can contact other species. Last year, I saw something I never thought I'd ever see, a blue flying stick, which turned out to be a damselfly, but I'd never seen this, and it was so exciting, and it stayed with me through most of the retreat.
Ah, I've seen many of those.
Yeah.
At, at any rate, so the deepened practice is developed, each person in their own way. However, we do keep periods of silence in the group areas while we're eating in the meditation hall, although people speak up with invitation, but there's not that kind of chatting or chattering that happens more commonly in daily life. And I do think that supports a deepening. However, people are free to find their own way, keep very strong silence if that's what they need, or not so much. Perhaps we say it's fine to take a walk and a talk, but just not in the main areas.
Right. And it seems just by that structure being different that you have access to different moods, um, to things kind of unfolding differently than they do in kind of your structured everyday life. And you can see a little bit more into how things don't always go as you plan, or how much control you actually have over your moods or your experience. It's like you get a bit more access to subtle things that are operating that you don't see in our charging around everyday life.
So if we were to put a second heading, the next one would be clarity and insight, because that really is the point of having fewer things coming in from the outside stimuli, is that you can go turn internal a little. Well, you're kind of stuck with it sometimes, but sometimes you can really get clarity on personal issues, emotional patterns, maybe even experience transformative insights. I just got an email though from a longtime member of our Sangha, and not this Sangha, but other Sanghas up here. And she had an amazing clarity on a personal, emotional pattern, actually, that she wrote out to me. And that was meditating in daily life. So it happens in daily life also.
Right. I mean, and since we're making a distinction of daily life and retreat, I'll just say that it is a kind of false distinction in some ways. You know, we're really kind of setting something up to compare it, which is often what you do. So these aren't like set in stone comparisons. Um, but there's one distinction, you know, in this clarity and insight is when there is less external stimuli, it seems like time operates differently. Like I have an access to time speeding up, slowing down, not operating like in a kind of methodical way that appears a little bit more in real life. There's a real distinction, right? Retreat is not real life, but again, it feels like you have an access to something more mysterious because time can go by. And probably many of you have had this in a sitting where it feels like a 40-minute sitting went by in a flash, and another sitting felt like 100 hours.
Right. That is an interesting thing that happens. It really can shake up in a perhaps in a good way some of our what I don't know whether to say assumptions or some of our I don't know what
Yeah,
it shakes
yeah,
something up. It shakes
yeah,
rattle rolls.
yeah.
Yes. Now, another reason people might choose to go on retreat, and it can happen sometimes, is you can get some restorative time. You can get time away from some of the pressures of daily life, from your screens, from some of the roles you have to assume in your life, some of the responsibilities, and it can help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I remember more in the days where I used to work more, or people who had been working and then took a retreat as like a break from work. You would sleep your first 2 to 3 days just to catch up on that kind of rest and restoration that accumulates without you knowing, that you're just not yet full cylinders. So that's the other way of just even resting slightly, sleeping, being less on, and having access to those states.
And that reminds me of one of the things we're okay with is if people fall asleep during the meditation. We don't think that's a big problem. We think they're probably tired. And to put it, there could be more things going on, but they might just be tired. And so, as long as they're not loudly snoring, all is in the group in-person situation.
Well, and we each have like a different restful propensity. Some people feel more comfortable having a day at home wherein you're in your pajamas and read a book all day. Another type of active person would just never even consider doing something like that. So you get a little bit more idea about your inclinations towards rest and the way it does help you. And when you get bored or you're going to go out, crawl out of your skin because there's not enough to do or enough stimulation.
So, Linda, noting the time
Oh,
we're at, perhaps we should end here and then you could continue on tomorrow if you so choose.
I think, yeah, let's continue on with retreat, talking about retreats for this week before retreat. We go on
Right.
retreat.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I think it is now my turn, a bell ringing turn for
Thank
me.
you.